2 preseason games left for the Utah Jazz. 2 areas of focus for those 2 games. Plus, Michael Smith joining us on Locked On Jazz.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked On Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. I am David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. Glad to have you with me. If you're new to the show and going to be with us for the season for the first time, welcome. If you're an everydayer, you're truly the best. We're free and available on all podcasting apps. We're on YouTube. Please hit the subscribe button. We're on Spotify, Apple. Please hit the follow button. It's all free. It's all beautiful. Love to have you. So thank you very much for taking the time. And we are here for you Monday through Friday. After every game, Ron Boone and I go live with Postcast. That is up and running. We will do that tonight as well. All right, let's get to it. There's 2 things to focus on in the preseason. 2 and 2. Do you remember Chuck Woolery? Does anybody? Somebody please tell me that you remember 2 and 2 with Chuck Woolery. We ended up renting Chuck Woolery's ex-wife's house, by the way. Weird. When we first moved here to Utah. Yeah, that's true. So there's 2 things to look at. Jazz play Sacramento tonight, and then Portland on Friday. I think we're going to see pretty much full go of everyone other than Isaiah Collier's out with a hamstring. Keyonte seems fine. I don't think we'll be resting anymore. I think there's some things to actually work on. So the first one is the obvious one, and that's turnovers. The Jazz are turning it over a lot again. We're back at 20% in our preseason games this year. And if you go to just the NBA preseason games, we're a little higher. Washington, Charlotte, Orlando, Pelicans are turning it over more, but we're right up at the top. I generally am not one who actually worries that much about turnovers because for a few reasons. One, I've always really just said, let me look at the offensive rating, and then I'll decide what I think of turnovers. In other words, if the offense is churning off enough good looks that occasionally the cost of creating that good look is that you turn the ball over, then that's the cost of getting that many good looks and that many layups and that many dunks and that many open threes, is that you're moving the basketball and that you're taking a risk. And, the one I've always said is like the guy drives the right baseline and he bounces the tough pass to the corner and he hits a 3. And the next time he bounces it and it hits the end line, I got 3 points in 2 possessions. I'm 1.5. I'm good. Like, I'll call it good. Now that's not 100% 3-point shot on the side. So that's not the greatest math, but you got the concept. And with the Jazz in this team, I'm not that worried about turnovers because, frankly, I think we're going to have to live with them. And that is that Keyonte George is a second-year point guard, and Isaiah Collier, when he comes back from the hamstring, is a first-year point guard. And then otherwise, we're now playing guys who aren't really point guards. We're going to turn the ball over. And third reason I don't really worry about it is because Will Hardy's offense has been good in his years, and the ball has moved. And part of the signature is that you move the ball, and the way to avoid turnovers is play ISO. However, the turnovers we're having are leading to a lot of open court, fast break, transition opportunities for the other team, which are incredibly detrimental to any improvement defensively. And it just feels like some of our turnovers are just guys putting themselves in really bad positions. But again, that could be youth and inexperience and non-natural point guard positions. So at some point we cannot really exist turning the ball over one every 5 possessions. Okay. That's got to come down a little bit. And it was too high last year. It would just be an area of focus, but I think you get very careful. Like every single one of these guys can play the game to not turn the ball over. You just neuter any of their risk-taking, any of their athleticism, and they just make the soft pass, and you get really boring, and you shoot with 5 on the shot clock, and you're terrible offensively. So I've always been like really hesitant on this game, but ours feel like it's high. The second one that I do think is relevant here for the final 2 preseason games is, and this is something that Will Hardy's been great at. And so again, I'm not sure that I am particularly and also considering what the expectations and anticipation of the season is, which I'm going to get to in a second on interesting. I'm not particularly concerned about, but our offense in the first quarters right now is an 85. We've really struggled to score early in games. Our assist to turnover ratio is below 1 in first quarters. Our shooting in first quarters is effective field goal percentage is 43.4. And if we even narrow that down like a little bit more, and the sample size gets too small to like the first 6 minutes before substitutions when we've actually had our team out on the floor, it's a struggle. So I just want to see us play opening. Now, our defense has been great, by the way. Our differential during the first quarter has not been bad at all because our defense in the first quarters has been an 87. So, give credit, and maybe that's where the focus is. But I just think it's like in the next 2 preseason games, how we start the games offensively, I think is pretty relevant. We've got that opening lineup, which I think really is our opening lineup, has to try to find some sequence of getting better at this and being able to, be able to make the plays that need to be made. So those would be my 2 things that I would throw out there for the final 2 preseason games before we're joined by Michael Smith today. John Hollinger at The Athletic wrote a really interesting piece, and I think this rung to me as a Jazz fan because this is going to be interesting for us. So 17 of the 30 teams in the NBA last year won between 40 and 52 games. And we were on pace for being the 18th. Now, somebody won games because we didn't. It's the most ever, 16 the year before. So 40 to 52 is this range of teams that think they're pretty good. We're going to see Sacramento tonight. They're going to be one of those teams. And then, really 40 of the 45 champs have had a scoring margin over 3 and had over 52 wins. And that's kind of okay, so that's the next level. And there's a bunch of teams this year that are going to be over 52 wins and think they're championship level teams, understandably. A year ago, obviously that was Boston, and then Denver's always in that. And this year will be Boston and New York. And I don't know about Philly with the back-to-back issues, but probably Milwaukee. And then in the West it'll be Oklahoma City and probably Minnesota. And you got it. I think Phoenix will be in there this year. They'll win over 52. I'm high on Phoenix. We'll see. I haven't done all my research yet. But it's an interesting thing because we've always kind of been in that group. And the way that happens, frankly, that 17 of 30 teams ends up winning between 40 and 52 games is that there has to be a pretty ugly bottom. So 7 teams last year lost 55 games. Well, we haven't really done this a great deal. We have had the end of the year slump that got us to 51 last year, but we've never done the 55. And there's a chance we're going to do the 55. And then what gets interesting on this is that the level by which teams are really losing, and we'll see what it is this year. I think it's going to be Brooklyn and Washington. Last year was the Pistons and the Wizards. They won 14 and 15 games the entire season. The Sixers in 15-16 are the worst kind of team, and the Bobcats of the year, who went 10 and 72. Pistons and Wizards got close to that last year. So it's an interesting league right now because there's 2 things that are different. We've had different champions all the time, John wrote about. The 10 players on the first and second team in the NBA are on 10 different teams. Haven't had that in a while, so there's no super team creation. And so there is this group of 17, maybe even 18 teams that are good, that really think they're good. Last year, there were 7 teams that lost at least 55 games, but there were 17 teams that won between 40 and 52, and then there were some that won above 52. So we're, I think, for the first time ever going to be in a group, the group as we really work on trying to get these 7 players and figure out what we have, that could be in this bottom group of losing at least 55 games. And we have not experienced that very often. What's also interesting is last year there were 7 of those teams. This year, I think there's a pretty well-defined 6, maybe 7, maybe 8. So the Nets and the Wizards, no question. And then the Blazers are very similar to us. They've got a lot of talent, DeAndre Ayton, Jeremy Grant, and then they got the young pieces, Scoot and Shaden, and Anthony Simons. Just enough talent to win a bunch of games. Pistons have a new coach in JB Bickerstaff. They have Tobias Harris. They've added Tim Hardaway Jr. They've added Malik Beasley. They're probably going to be a little better. The Hornets, who knows? I don't think so. You have us, and then the question is kind of the Bulls and the Raptors. Will we have more than 7 teams at sub 55 or post more than 55 losses? And then that creates quite a battle to get into that group. You know, we need to make sure we're top 10 so we keep our pick. And does that mean there'll be more than 17 teams between 40 and 52? Kind of wild. All right, that's the landscape of the ecosystem that is the NBA. Michael Smith joins us for day 2 coming up here. Hope you enjoyed day 1 with Michael. Day 2 is next here on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also in Logan and in Linden. All I can tell you is I've bought 3 of them, right? Like, there's really no bigger statement I can make. I've represented the Hyundai brand now for 7 years. I've told you about the Murdochs and their 80-plus years in Utah. There's no bigger statement than I can make that I've bought 3 of them. Driving the Ioniq 5 as an electric car, it's fabulous. Won Motor Trend Car of the Year for a reason. Both my kids got a Santa Fe early on because they were the ones that hit all the safety features, gave them the size that I wanted them to have driving Parley Summit, and hit all the safety features you could possibly have. The new Santa Fe is incredible. I'm driving the Palisade right now. Can't imagine a better car. It's all at Murdoch Hyundai, located 4646 South State Street, also in Logan and in Linden. If you're going to stop by, please email me first at dlock09@gmail.com so we can give you your VIP experience that you deserve as a Locked On every day. That's dlock09@gmail.com for Murdoch Hyundai. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is the official ticketing app of Locked On. Why? Because they take care of everything you need, including the new super deals where Game Time begins to understand what kind of seats you want, what events you want, and Game Time gives you your customized spot and your super deals on everything. Game Time picks, the curation makes it easier for you to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. They give you all-in pricing, so toggle that feature on that shows you the total upfront cost with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views are a necessity if you've never been to the place before. Low price guaranteed. Game Time ticket coverage. It's all at Game Time. So download the Game Time app today. Create an account and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Redeem LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Lucky enough to have day 2 with Michael Smith. You can just rev up for the season, start firing up for it, getting ready to go. All right, backcourt right now, it's Keyonte. We talked about in the last show for the everydayers. They got that. How did Jordan, a year ago, I sat here every day and said, you can't play Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton together. I got to own it. And then Will kind of found a way to do it.
I know.
And I couldn't believe it, so I give Will great credit. How do they fit together, and how do they meld, and how does this backcourt right now, it seems to be Keyonte, Jordan, Colin, and question mark, fit together?
It's really a bizarre situation. Like you're so right. Like Sexton and Clarkson, you'd think would never fit together because neither one is a natural point guard, right? They're both scoring guards by nature. Colin's a scorer in college. He's a scorer. His first year in the NBA, he has 20-point average in Cleveland before the knee injury, before the Jazz pick him up. And to his credit, I think he had a fantastic season last year. Bounce back year. I think 2 years ago, testing the knee, seeing where he fit with a new team. But still you had that energy. And that guy, he's so likable and lovable. He's a crowd favorite. And, Jordan's a crowd favorite in another way. But Colin's energy is infectious. He won about 5 games for the team last year. And you would have the numbers, but there's a stretch where he goes 10 games of, 20 a game and 5 assists and 50% and 40%. Like, it was fantastic, and shooting abilities that I didn't think he had, but a lot of it propelled by his ability to get to the rim. So I like him. He's not a pure point guard, but let's give him credit. From a career 3 assist game guy to go to 5 assists is a huge jump.
Have you noticed that, by the way, everybody who plays under Will Hardy goes and has their career best year in assists?
Yep. Like even Lauri from
Jordan
1
Clarkson
to 1.9, or Jordan Clarkson. It goes back to a Popovich, system and mantra. And you know this, I know this. I'm not sure that everyone knows this, but in 2014, the Warriors are kind of this, championship team in embryo, coached by Mark Jackson. Okay. That year, on their side of half court, David, their offensive side of half court, they had the fewest passes in the entire league. They lose to the Clippers in round 1, game 7. I'm there calling those games. I witnessed it. It was a dramatic game 7 win. That was the whole Donald Sterling fiasco, and the team was eventually stripped from him, but that whole thing happened in that first round. Mark Jackson fired, in comes Steve Kerr. They go from last in passes, number of passes, to Steve Kerr, a Popovich disciple, to number 1 in passes on their side, their offensive side of half court, and they win the title. Now, disclaimer, David, they did not have to play the Clippers, who I thought were a viable candidate that year, and they did not have to play the Spurs, who with Tim Duncan and Kawhi Leonard won 21 of the final 22 regular season games, but the Clippers eliminated in round 1 on a Chris Paul buzzer beater in game 7. So they got Memphis in the first round, Houston the second round, whoever they got, and they got to the finals and ended up beating LeBron for their first of 4 titles. But that's, to your point, to kind of give some background to the Popovich passing way. And he was always and is a believer of giving up a very good shot for the better shot. And so all of his coaching tree feels that way, whether it's Borrego or Kerr, or, Mike Brown, or all the guys that have come from his system. Will Hardy, let's move the ball. Let's pass the ball. Let's get a good shot. So he preaches that. And if you're not going to move the ball, you're probably not going to play for him. So everybody has better years. I mentioned that Jordan's also a fan favorite. It's kind of a different way, right? I'm newer to the Jordan Clarkson Jazz scene than you are, and I realize he's been here for the whole time I've been here. He's just so stinking cool off the court that people
he's a chameleon.
He is, and people just gravitate towards him because he's so different, and he's so chill, and he's just so unique and uniquely his own that it's actually likable. And he gets away with taking the worst shots of anyone I've ever seen take in the NBA. And that's hard for me to say because I broadcast for the team and for his games. But he has a green light and he'll take some shots, and I just will look at my partner, and I know you'll look at yours, and I'm like, what shot did he just take? Boone probably thinks that because he played in the league. I think that because I played in the league, and I'll be like, I could have never taken that shot. I don't think Larry Bird ever took that shot. But it's kind of fun. And so there's a fun way about him. And then there's moments of brilliance that you'll just be like, how did he do that? Like how did he do that? And so anyway,
I think Jordan's, we haven't talked a lot about Jordan in any of these conversations. And I think, and this is our last real one, Booner's coming around, but I think he's really interesting because if we'll just be honest about him. Like, let me give him his respect. He averaged 21 points a game 2 years ago. Like, he was 6th man of the year. Like, I'm a fan.
Yeah.
He was terrible last year. And he would be the first to tell you.
It was a down
His
year.
effective field goal percentage went from 52 to 47%. 47% effective field goal percentage is not a viable NBA number.
No, you need to explain that to the fans because that includes everything.
That's like, so he shot 41% from the field, but he shot 29% from 3 on 6 attempts a game.
Yep.
So effective field goal percentage weighs your 3-point shooting. The league average effective field goal percentage is around 51. And he was at 47. He was one of the 3 or 4 worst offensive players in the entire league last year, which is really not who Jordan Clarkson is. So it's going to be interesting to see him figure out with this group of players what his vibe is and how he's going to find himself, because somehow it didn't work last year. It worked brilliantly the year before. And, he had the injuries early. I think you have to remember that, I think it was about 17 games in the year. He's kind of off his kilter. And then he really comes back. And if I remember correctly, he dropped 30 on night one and it felt like everything was fine. And then just kind of was like, either like, it wasn't like, it was like bust, boom, bust, boom. It wasn't like boom or bust. It was like bust, boom, like 30, 27, 30, but like in the middle was like 3 of 18, 4 of 11, like really big off numbers that we're not used to seeing out of him. So
you know what,
I do think he's going to be super interesting.
You know what coaches love? Coaches love known commodities. They love knowing what they can count on, like what that guy's going to give me every night. That guy's going to give me 18 points. It's going to be on 50% shooting. He's going to give me 5 assists, going to give me solid D. But with Jordan, it was the great unknown last year. And so he's always had a little bit of the unknown, because it could be good or really great. But last year was either, like you said, really good or it wasn't good at all. And he probably for the first time in a while, like think about it, coming off 6th man of the year and then a decent year. And then last year, what is he now? 31, turning 32?
Yep.
Or thereabouts. It's probably the first time he looks at his NBA mortality. So I'm just looking at his career and his trajectory and getting to different teams and then getting to the Jazz and finding his niche as a bench player and a role player and a scorer and be loved by a fan base. Last year's probably the first time, at least this summer, and I haven't talked to Jordan, where he probably looked at things and said, if I don't play better, I'm not going to last another 6 years. And with the money these guys are making today, Dave,
6 years a lot.
Every player should be thinking, how can I play 6 more years?
Right. That's a great point. By the way, just a note on those two together, because we talked about it at the start. Offensively, when Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson were on the floor together, it was one of them playing point guard, not with another point guard, just the two of them.
Yeah.
Our offense was a 123.6 in the 96th percentile. A little bit of an abnormal free throw rate, just worth noting. It was in the 99th percentile. However, our defense was in the 14th percentile, which would be no big surprise. But we were plus 2.4, and there are not a lot of combinations last year that you can go find that are positive. Yeah. Kind of crazy. All right, Lauri Markkanen's next steps with Michael Smith, Will Hardy's year 3, and some thoughts on the Western Conference before we wrap it up. Great to have Michael Smith with us today. We'll continue with him here on Locked On Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is the official sports book of Locked On, and FanDuel is tearing it up for you. Go to FanDuel.com and get all the great deals, but most of all, this is the best. This is pretty cool. How about bonus bets? I know, bet $5 and you're guaranteed to go get $200 in bonus bets when you place your first $5 bet. So when you're in the middle of when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats if you play, and so much more. Same page where you place your bets at FanDuel.com. That's why NFL fans have made FanDuel America's #1 sports book. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel right now. Go to FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com. Check it out. You get the latest NFL odds for the weekend games coming up, or Monday night, whatever it might be, or Super Bowl odds. The Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers still seem to be the favorite, though. Josh Allen, the Buffalo Bills, plus 750 now. Keep a little eye on that as well. It's all over at FanDuel.com. Michael Smith, Lauri Markkanen's a top 30 player in the NBA. He's unique in that he gets 84% of his baskets assisted. What has to happen for him to become a top 20 player in the NBA?
Ooh. I don't know how much he can do better.
Fair point.
Like, honestly, I don't know how much more he can do for this team. I don't know how much better he can get. The kid is a warrior. Like, he scores in traffic. He scores under the rim. He finishes with authority. He can catch and shoot threes like no other 7-footer I've ever seen. He drives right. He drives left. He dunks off the left leg, the right leg. I guess he could improve like a post-up game. Like take advantage of smaller guys guarding him that have to guard him on the perimeter and post him up and punish him, like a lot of great players did at the end of their careers, Jordan being one. just develop something down there that's just so unique, which I wouldn't put it past him. I'm not saying he has that assignment or he's working on that at all. But in this given situation where he's really asked to do a lot, and that's score 25 a game on a young team with revolving, point guards and not really a stable lineup, I just think he's a fantastic player. I don't know, Dave, that we'll see the true greatness of Lauri until you surround him with two other top 50 players.
Right.
And then when
if he gets around two other top 50 players, he goes 50, 40, 90.
Yeah. And I'm I love that, right? There's only a handful of guys, probably less than 10, who've ever done that in the league. Steve Nash did it 4 times. Bird did it twice. Mark Price, Reggie Miller, Kevin Durant, somebody else. Jose Calderon did it one year, but
really?
didn't have enough attempts to qualify. Steph's done it once.
I think Steph's done it.
Steph's done it once, but missed very shortly on the field goal percentage. The funny thing is, Nash did it 4 times, and he's missed 3 times by hundredths of a point on the free throws. He could have done it 7 times. Don't get me started on the greatest shooters of all time. But
by the way, that's Steph 15-16 season we're just talking about, just not to get derailed here. But
unreal.
I'm still not sure any of us realize what that. Like, I hear people list like the top 5 greatest players of all time and all these things, and I'm like, well, 15-16 by Steph Curry is the single best offensive season by any player in the history of the game. He averaged 30 points a game. He went 50, 40, 90, and he was taking 11 threes a game.
He made more than 400 threes that year.
Yeah, like, good night.
402, I think. Is that the
was it? Oh my God, yeah. I didn't know that. Oh my gosh.
He's going to end up with 5,000 plus threes and do it at greater than 42.5%.
Right. I can't wait to watch him. All right. It's interesting. I think you have a good point on Lauri. The one thing Thurl and I talked about was owning his own space a little bit. That when he catches at the elbow and he's playing one-on-one, he's playing not off the move. It's always a fade back. Like, how do you catch and own your space so that you now own the area into your next move? I feel like whenever he's playing that ISO game at the nail, he's retreating and off balance, and the defender owns the space.
It's a valid point, and it's because his game never was that. So his game never was that at Arizona. It never was that in Chicago. The one stint in Cleveland, it just wasn't that. And now he's been given this freedom and this offensive revelation. You're my guy, and with greater reps, he's produced not only greater numbers but still efficient numbers. That's the sign of a great player, right? When he's given more leeway and more volume of shots, does he still produce at the same level or greater? And he has. But I just don't think he's ever been that kind of a player. Give me ball at the elbow and let me just turn and face you. Like Adrian Dantley, Bernard King, guys who operated in that. Before the 3-ball, you had guys that just owned that little turf and owned their own space. And Thurl probably saw those guys up front, probably had to guard them. I had to guard those guys. Bernard King was the hardest guy I ever had to guard.
I bet.
Think about it. I guarded Bird every day in practice, and the hardest guy I ever had to guard was Bernard King.
Really?
That was post-knee surgery.
Wow.
He was that good, that quick, unbelievable inside 20 feet with an 18-foot jump shot and a drive and floaters and runners. I was just like, oh my gosh, who is this guy? I remember on a preseason game, we're in Toronto playing the Bullets, Washington Bullets, my rookie year. And coach puts me in the starting lineup. And Bird says to me, he goes, you guard that guy over there. He pointed to Bernard King. And I looked at him. I said, is he any good? He goes, you'll find out very quickly.
I mean, he's one of those what ifs, right? Wasn't he at 33 a game before his knee surgery that year?
Yeah. Like unreal.
All right. Will Hardy, year 3. I don't know what else he's supposed to do. I thought last year was one of the more awesome things I've ever seen, because we couldn't have been worse at one point, and then he somehow melded it into something. What do you think Will Hardy year 3 is going to be?
I don't think we've seen the best of Will Hardy. Isn't that interesting?
That's interesting.
Because it's not that he hasn't had a challenge, because everything he's done to this date has been a challenge. Like thrust into being a head coach right away in a new city with a young family and players he's never seen before, hiring a new staff, learning to be a head coach, handling the media and the duties and all the obligations that go with it. And he didn't do it like in San Antonio or Boston where he had some, time and he just ascended. He went to a new place. and the youngest head coach, right? No, I guess the kid in Boston's younger, but
close.
still a young head coach. And I think each year he surpassed everyone's expectations. And in a lot of ways, the Jazz are rebuilding, right? It would have been in their best interest not to win that many games. Not that they're ever going to try and lose. They would never do that to the fan base, but it would have been in their best interest not to be as good as they were, competitive as they were. But he just gets the most out of his guys. I think his greatest asset is his communication skills and his organic nature. He's real with people and he's unafraid. And that doesn't happen very often at that age, in that kind of a role with guys who make, 3 times as much as you do. But he's able to do that. Look at somebody in the face. Here's what I expect. Here's what you can do. Here's what I'm hoping for. Here's what you're not doing. Right? And he held people accountable last year. Maybe that's the greatest thing he did, is in the middle of a tumultuous, difficult year where he melded things together. There were times he got upset, called him out, said, you're not going to play if you don't pass the ball. If you're not going to defend for me, you're not going to play. And so that takes moxie and guts. I just like him. He's honest. He's candid. He tells it like it is. There's no agenda there. There's no insecurities. Like, I've been around a lot of the great coaches in the NBA who are some of the most insecure people I know. And it's all masked. It's masked with a media session where they know how to handle the media, but deep down, there's not a true genius coming through. And I think with him, with Will, there could be that. Like, you don't know that yet. He hasn't been in a playoff series yet, but we will see that at some point. And ironically, David, a lot of times, think of Brett Brown in Philadelphia, the guy who's given the task to rebuild a team doesn't get to hang around to see the results of a team that then becomes a playoff team. Somehow, crazily, I think Will is going to get that shot.
Yeah.
Like, I think they picked him young enough and have found enough favor in him, meaning Danny and Justin and Ryan, that we like this guy. And I think he's the one guy who's been asked to rebuild a team, learn how to do that, and at the same time will probably be around for the success that comes in just a few years.
That's interesting. And that's, it's probably why some of the things he talks about, no free minutes, none of those things, he doesn't sell his soul for the task, and then he can coach again the next year. All right, quick thoughts. What do you think the biggest storylines for your offseason of where the Western Conference stands right now? What jumps out to you as the thing that has you kind of either thinking or perplexed or thoughts, or what's your thought on the West?
Wow. I don't think the Clippers are better. I don't think the Lakers are any better. I think Dallas got better, but I don't know that Dallas at full strength beats, a Boston if Boston gets back there. I think
Let me jump in quickly. You've touched on mine. Mine is that the Lakers, the Warriors, and the Clippers are projected on FanDuel Sportsbook as the 9th, 10th, and 12th seeds.
Wow. And I believe
the Warriors, Lakers, and Clippers. The Clippers are projected to win 40 games and be the 12th seed.
I mean, they're one injury away from being very mediocre.
Yeah, in a new building.
And the Paul George exit, I thought they were the most talented team in the West last year, and somehow, Kawhi just didn't. I don't know what Kawhi's deal. I think he's only played 7 of his last 19 potential playoff games. So I'm not a fan of that, because I played in an era when Jordan played every game and Bird played every game, and I don't know how you don't play every game the way it is now with 3 days off in playoff series. It's ridiculous to me. But Houston was surprisingly good at the end of the season, could be super intriguing. Denver has to bounce back, but I don't know that their roster's any better, right? I'm perplexed a little bit. Memphis obviously will be in the hunt, and they weren't before, but Ja makes a difference on both ends of the floor and just attacks so much that puts so much pressure on your defense. Holy cow, who am I missing?
Well, I mean, OKC and Minnesota are probably 1-2.
Oh, well, yeah. OKC's got to be better. And they made a defensive move, right? Didn't they getting rid of Giddey and getting Caruso, and they're now a year better and a year stronger. And Minnesota's surprisingly good. So I was shocked that Minnesota did as well as they did.
The only one I'm worried about in Minnesota, but I probably the same worry I had last year, was
Edwards.
Mike